Hey, welcome to the Sequential Artists Workshop Pro Calls. Every week we ask another creator, another graphic novelist to come sit down with us and tell us where they came from, what were the first things they made, what did they make recently, how did they do it, what are they thinking about now, how are they going to move forward, how do they keep going, all those things, career things, art things, feeling things, creative things. Every month it's a new creator, new challenges, new stories. Come check it out. Come sit down with us. You can sit down live for some of these calls by being a member of our groups. You can find us at learn.sawcomics.org. Come check it out. Come be a graphic novelist with us. Come join us on the socials. Sometimes it's Comics Workshop, sometimes it's Saw Comics. Either way, come check us out and welcome. Okay, we're starting. Thank you everybody for being here. Welcome. This is a Saw exclusive, so it's not a Friday night comic where we open the doors to everyone, even though we love everyone. This is where we tell you that we love you more. And so we're going to give you something exclusive, like showing you opening the doors to Craig Bostick's studio. Gosh, Craig, I've known you longer than almost anybody in comics. Like, I'm not going to say.
Well, you definitely, I've known you longer than anybody I've known.
Okay.
All
right, but I'm not
you
gonna...
already knew people before me, but
okay, well, all right. Anyway, it's been a long time. Excuse me.
yeah.
Craig's a wonderful creator of a lot of mini comics and great illustration and painting and a great curator and lover of a certain aesthetic, which I'm sure you'll learn about. I assume that's what we'll talk about. And just to see the many ways in which you've turned that aesthetic and you've folded into your other interests and your other all your other passions, it's just so inspiring to me. And also I love that aesthetic anyway, so like any chance to see a bunch of like old, like, you know, Fred Flintstone cartoons or whatever. So anyway, so straight from Summer, are you in Somerville? No, you're in JP. Okay, right. So straight from JP in outside of Boston is Craig Bostick. Yay, thank you. Okay, Craig, now I'm going to spotlight you. And if there's anything I missed in the introduction, I mean, that wasn't a proper introduction. It didn't say Craig has done this book and that book. I thought you might probably show us that over time. And I don't have, like, I could read your Wikipedia page or something, but
Yeah, I don't think I have one of those. But
oh my God, I'm gonna make one. Okay. I'll be okay. Anyway, Craig, so hi. So tell us, like, so tell us where you come from and what you have done and all the things that influence your work and all that stuff.
All right. Well, I'll get started. Thanks for having me and thanks for coming. Let's see. I'm going to do this. I'm going to show you a bunch of my work, but first I thought I'd start off by showing some of my influences and inspirations. I've been drawing for as long as I can remember, and in the beginning I was really drawn to cartoony drawings of all kinds, comic books, comic strips, magazine and book illustrations, advertising, and especially animated cartoons. Some of my earliest memories are watching, cartoons on TV, like the Archies here, that was based on the comic book characters. I watched a lot of Hanna-Barbera cartoons, like the Flintstones. Even when I was really young, I was aware of and drawn to this type of line quality. It wasn't uniform, but it varied in width, and I was really drawn to that from an early age. This was another one of my favorite cartoons. It was called Secret Squirrel. It was another Hanna-Barbera cartoon. It's like a spy spoof, and I just love this frame from the opening credits. Just the design of it and the colors, simplicity, the way the trash cans looked.
What years are we talking about when looking at this stuff?
This is like 1965, I think. Yogi Bear. Hanna-Barbera cartoons from the late 50s really had great backgrounds, but I love this background.
Yeah. This is all
Um,
done on Procreate back then, right?
this is a background from a Looney Tunes Sylvester and Tweety cartoon. Yeah, I mean, I just love this. Like none of the lines are like at right angles. Um, just great colors and shapes, composition. And it's a lot to look at here for me. That flat colors and stuff. This was from a Disney cartoon, um, something that they made for TV, like a Disneyland episode from 1955. But I mean, you can see, I mean, it's very Picasso. You can cubism influence here.
And this is also early 60s, that late 50s.
That was probably 1955 as well.
Oh, yeah.
But those things were rerun when I was a kid, so I would see them. This was Rocky and Bullwinkle. This was from the early 60s. Yeah, I mean, it was limited animation, but it had really great design. I love the colors and the shapes. And I don't know, like look at that cabinet and the table and the door. It's just it's really great stuff. And this stuff was clearly aimed at adults. If you watch it now, you can see that. One of my favorite cartoons was Underdog. Um, I really, I really like the use of like non-black outlines, and you can see that in the bottles and the table in this still. As a when I was really little, I had no idea how you could make a white line because I didn't have any tools that would make a line like that. It kind of intrigued me.
And how is it done? Is it gouache with a brush?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's what I've discovered more recently. But yeah, I was like, I didn't have anything that would make a white outline like that. Um, I really liked Casper when I was really young, and um, I really identified with him. He was nice to everyone, but when they found out he was a ghost, they would usually scream and run away. Um, and this was a board game that I had as a kid, and actually I still have one. It's hanging up in my office right here. I just love this, like the shapes and the way the characters look, the outlines, those asterisks, stars, the lettering. I mean, there's just so much, the asymmetrical house. Yeah,
Those spirals.
yeah, the spirals are amazing. Um, Another board game that I really liked was Clue, and these were the cards, and I really love the character designs.
Wow, I've never seen that era
Oh, really? That was like early 60s until the early 70s, I think. Well, that's the one I had. But yeah. This is a board game. This is sections of it. A board game based on the TV show called My Favorite Martian. There's nothing in the TV show that looks anything like this board game. This board game looks way better than the TV show. But I love the lettering and the colors, and everything just has so much energy. Yeah, like I don't know, I love the Martian and this toaster here on the right. It's really great.
Hmm. Look at those motion lines. Oh, sorry, I got.
Yeah, there were so many of them.
Yeah, but they were also just dots, dotted lines,
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway.
Anyway, when I was little, my family would go to the grocery store once a week, and when we were done, each of us four kids could pick out a comic book. And my parents at that time didn't allow us to get superhero comics, but we could get things like Casper or other Harvey comics like Hot Stuff and Little Dot. Um, I always thought these comics looked like they were drawn by machines because they look so perfect. Um, the lines were perfect. The characters were always on model. I remember looking at these and thinking, these can't be drawn by people. They must be drawn by machines. But then I was like, how could a machine draw a comic? They must be drawn by people. And I just go back and forth and never being able to decide how they were made. I love this Flintstones cover. It's so simple, but that lettering is amazing and the colors. Um, it's kind of hard to see, but the clouds have, there's a texture in that line. Like it's maybe I don't know, it's colored pencil or crayons or something. Um, when I was in graphic design school, they would always tell you never hyphenate a title, but this is so great they could get away with it.
Yeah.
George of the Jungle is based on another animated cartoon that was created by the Jay Ward studio that also did Rocky and Bullwinkle. Um, I was obsessed with like supernatural things like witches and monsters and ghosts. And so I was really drawn to comics like this.
Wow, I've never seen Wacky Witch. She looks cool.
Besides watching the Archie TV show, I also read the comics. And unlike the Harvey comics, you could really tell that different artists drew different stories. Like they were,
Hmm.
they had their own, I don't know, their own style. And back then they never included the like artist credits. So you never knew who they were, but you could tell that there was different artists.
That Dan DeCarlo on the right?
They're both Dan DeCarlo.
Oh, are they? Oh,
I found out I always had a favorite cartoonist, but I never knew his name until later and found out it was Dan DeCarlo. And he did most of the covers around this time and a lot of the stories. He's especially known for his female characters like Betty and Veronica. And he created Josie and Sabrina the Teenage Witch. This panel by Dan DeCarlo, he does this thing I noticed, like in his panels, especially on covers, where in the foreground he'll put this like large head in the corner, kind of like a design element. And you can see that here.
really?
Yeah. Besides comic books, I also liked comic strips, and Peanuts was by far my favorite. This is a strip from 1957. Let's see. It says, I bet if I disappeared tomorrow, nobody would miss me. Oh, I don't think that's true, Charlie Brown. You don't? No, I don't think that's strictly true at all. Even if you were to disappear today, nobody would miss you.
No.
Anyway, I identified with Charlie Brown as well. Cartoon characters are also used as product mascots a lot, especially on breakfast cereals. My favorite is the one on the left, Quisp, which was created by the Jay Ward studio that also did Rocky and Bullwinkle. Lucky Charms. Another Jay Ward creation, Captain Crunch. Super Sugar Crisp. And it really did have an Archie's record on the back.
On the box.
Yeah, it was cardboard. You cut it out of the back of the box and you could play it. Isn't that wild? This Tricks box, that's another one of my all-time favorite designs. I found out recently that the designer of the Tricks rabbit was named Joe Harris, and he also designed an underdog.
Oh, wow.
There's a connection there. Boo Berry was my favorite of the monster cereals. Another example of my supernatural obsession. I used to draw Boo Berry all the time. I mean, I used to draw a lot of these characters all the time, but especially he's pretty easy to draw. So my
Prevalent
favorite.
bow ties were. Sorry.
What were you gonna say?
It was funny how prevalent bow ties were on
Yeah.
characters.
Yeah, that is weird. This is my favorite TV show, Bewitched. It was a show about a witch, and like a lot of TV shows at the time, it had an animated opening sequence. And I always remember wondering why the whole show couldn't be a cartoon. But I just loved like the way the skyline looks, like everything's all askew and no right angles. There's like asterisk stars again and that lettering, and the white on the blue. I mean, all the stuff I like. More great lettering. I know, I know I've talked about this before, Tom. This is one of my favorite things. I love that kitchen. Like it's not, there's no right angles. It's kind of skew and
So
um,
great.
yeah, yeah. There's great lines that aren't black. Um,
Mm.
yeah, this is I could look at this forever. Um, so I used to watch Saturday morning cartoons all the time, but one day I got up like early before the cartoons. When I turned on the TV, there was this TV show called Sunrise Theater, and they would show all these like movies from the 50s before the cartoons, and they were like old horror movies and sci-fi movies. Um, so once I discovered that, I would get up every Saturday and watch these. Like Earth versus the Flying Saucers,
Ooh.
Cult of the Cobra.
What? Oh my gosh.
It Came from Beneath the Sea. I Married a Monster from Outer Space. And The Leech Woman. And besides the movies themselves, I really love the title designs.
Yeah.
So this was in third grade, they showed us this educational film. It was called Our Mr. Sun, and it was a mix of live action and animation, and I just loved the drawings. I remember going home and trying to draw the characters from memory after only seeing the film only one time. The movie was an actual reel of film shown with a projector, so there was no way for me to easily see it again. There was no videotapes or DVDs or YouTube or anything. But despite its influence on me, it took me years to track down a copy of this.
And this is all part of the sun, so it's got a bit about water and other things. Huh?
Yeah. That was about, that last part was about photosynthesis. That was like chlorophyll. Eventually, I found out the animation was produced by this company called United Productions of America, or otherwise known as UPA. The company was started in the late 40s by some disgruntled Disney animators. They wanted to do something more different than the lush, realistic animation that Disney was doing at the time. So they broke off and started their own thing. And they eventually did a lot of commercials and industrial and educational film, but they also did theatrical shorts. Most famously, the Mr. Magoo series. This is from When Magoo Flew in 1955, which won an Oscar. They always were like getting awards, but they didn't make a lot of money. This is from a Mr. Magoo cartoon. I just love this frame. It's kind of like the Bewitched kitchen. It's yeah,
Mm.
it's pretty amazing. Not as well known. They did some like short cartoons with the character Gerald McBoing Boing. He was originally created by Dr. Seuss. Um, the first of those cartoons was written by Dr. Seuss. Um, so they were doing something a little more sophisticated and stylized, but also much simpler, more economical than traditional animation. Here's some stills from some other UPA cartoons. This is from one called Christopher Crumpet.
Hmm.
It's just so simple, flat colors, just a little bit of texture in the background. Um, definitely like less is more kind of thing, which I really like.
Are those filing cabinets in the back? They are.
Yeah, there's
Huh.
filing cabinets, and I mean, look at that chair. I mean, there's
Oh,
so much that I just love about this thing. Great. Um, this is from Fudget's Budget.
budget's what?
Budget's Budget. And this is from a cartoon called The Jaywalker. So when I was a kid, I used to hang out. I lived in a little town, and there was like a bunch of forest area, and I was in there one day, and I discovered this old cabin, and I went inside the cabin. It had been abandoned, and there was like an old mattress on the floor and a snakeskin, and there was a copy of magazine that had the very first installment of Spy versus Spy. It was probably from the early 60s. And I loved this cartoon. It was, very simple. It was wordless, black and white, and it's kind of the same premise every time. Um, it's just, I guess, this Cold War um, premise of these spies fighting each other. Sometimes neither spy would win, or they both would win, or one spy would triumph over the other. But yeah, I just love the like what the lines look like. The whole thing was just really appealing. Um, I was happy to discover that Mad magazine was still around at that time, and it still carried Spy versus Spy. Um, the artist was a Cuban immigrant, Antonio Proquias. And magazine's humor was kind of similar to the wacky package stickers, which parodied popular products. Um, so even though I wasn't really reading like superhero comics, um, it seemed like superhero comics kind of permeated pop culture at the time. And I remember going to a friend's house one day after school, and there was a rerun of the 1966 show Batman, and I thought it was great. It had great colors. The plot of the episode I saw involved a surfing contest between Batman and the Joker. It was great. Um, my favorite part was one of the Joker's assistants had a walkie-talkie in the shape of a hot dog. um, then Super Friends came to Saturday morning TV. I think this was the first time I ever heard of Wonder Woman. And I used to watch that every week. I remember in fourth grade, there was like this box in our class that was full of comics, and this was one of them. I think why it stuck with me was I really loved the story. Because Lois Lane saved Superman in the story, and I thought it was really great to have a woman be the hero. Not long after that, I got sick. Like I had mono, and I was home for a while. And my next door neighbor brought over one of her son's comic books for me to read. Um, and it was this 100-page comic, and which was a lot bigger than normal comics at the time. And I just read it. I guess I just read it over and over. Like I was really into it. The first 20 pages were all news stories, and it featured Batman and the Metal Man. They were robots, and they each had made from a different metal, and they had different abilities and personalities. This was drawn by Jim Aparo. But the rest of the comics, like the other 80 pages, were all reprints of stories from the 40s, 50s, and 60s. So I mean, I feel like I was really exposed to things, much earlier than what, maybe a lot of people were. Um, and there were all these different characters that I was interested in that were in this comic. The Green Arrow was drawn by George Papp, who also drew a lot of Superboy comics, and Hawkman and Hawkgirl, drawn by Joe Kubert. So I discovered there was nowhere in the little town where you could just buy like regular comics, but the grocery store would carry these 100-page comics. So like when I could, I would get them, and they were the same thing. Like the first 20 pages were a new story, but then they'd have all these old stories from the 40s, 50s, and 60s. So I was really being exposed to a lot of older stuff. The only other place to buy comics was this used bookstore, and every once in a while they would have these old comics would show up on the shelf, and they weren't in plastic bags or anything, and they often didn't have covers, but you could just get them for like 10 cents or 25 cents. And um, it's funny that I always thought these comics were so serious as a kid, but now I love how ridiculous they are. um,
Mm.
yeah, besides all these different characters I was exposed to, they also was exposed to a lot of different artists. This Green Lantern was drawn by Gil Kane, and the Teen Titans were drawn by Nick Cardy. Almost all oops. Almost all superheroes had secret identities. And as a kid, I related to that concept.
Mm.
Adults were always trying to cover up their secret identity, but it never seemed to traumatize them. But on the other hand, Superboy often seemed torn up by how hard it was with a secret identity, how hard it was to have friends.
Hmm.
Choke, the first pal I ever had, and he's betraying me. Sob. Bosh. Clark is always turning us down for one reason or another. His only friend is Superboy. We're not good enough for him. The fellows think I'm a snob. Little do they know how much I'd like to be friends with them. And he's crying. Um, you're my best friend, Clark. I want you to know about me. What's friendship worth if you can't share secrets? Don't you have any secrets you'd like to tell me? I don't know, Freddie. I've got to think about it. That night, as Clark tosses restlessly in his bed, should I tell him or shouldn't I? I've never told anyone before about my secret identity, but I'd like so much to be a friend of his. Anyway, as a gay kid, I could really relate to these panels.
Wow.
So I became obsessed with reading and drawing superhero comics for a few years, but after a while, I lost interest. I know, like I tried to draw comics, like actual comics sometimes, but I didn't have any idea how to do it. And I was really frustrated that I could never make my drawings look like the drawings in the comics. Like I didn't know how to get that varied line width. And I would draw in pencil and then ink over it with a felt tip marker, and it didn't look the same. Um, and I could never find any books about cartooning in the library, and I didn't know any cartoonists or even anybody else who read comics. Um, so
Oh,
in high school, I was still drawing a lot of pencil drawings, mostly copying photographs from rock magazines and album covers. Um, Here's a drawing from that time my parents recently found in their basement. Um, you can see I wrote phone numbers all over the page at the bottom. But this was a drawing of Stevie Nicks. This was a scratchboard drawing I did in high school of Emmylou Harris.
oh,
Anyway, this is another drawing. This is Bjorn Borg. He was a tennis star. Um, it never occurred to me to ever pursue any career besides art, but I didn't know that you could just be an artist. I figured the only thing I would study was graphic design, so that's what I did. In art history in college, I was exposed to modern art for the first time, and I really loved it. One of the artists I really liked was Picasso. What I like about these paintings were the same things I liked about my favorite drawings and cartoons, like the limited color palette, you know, how flat it looked, asymmetrical balance, and the abstraction. This is Matisse, Calder, Leger,
hmm.
Stuart Davis. Oops, too fast. Stuart Davis. This really looks like some of the UPA backgrounds. uh, Juan Miro. I think it's obvious, or now it's obvious to me that a lot of those animators were looking at modern art, were inspired by it. So in one of my graphic design classes, we were encouraged to subscribe to this magazine called Print, which is like a professional graphic design magazine. Um, so I did. We had a super cheap student discount. Like maybe the first issue I got was this special comics issue that was edited by Art Spiegelman, who was author of the graphic novel Mouse. Um, in the top left corner, you can see his drawing on the letter C. It was all about this new wave of art comics, and I was immediately interested. This was in 1988. In the same way that the comic my neighbor gave me when I was in fourth grade kind of, spurred me to go into discover all about superhero comics. This was the catalyst that set me investigating, discovering about this new world of comics. I was turned on to a lot of my favorite cartoonists through this issue. People like Charles Burns, someone who definitely had seen some monster movies. I loved his line quality and his humor. Linda Berry is another artist I really loved. I don't really see an influence from her drawings, but I'm definitely was influenced by her writing. Richard Saul, another artist who had seen some monster movies for sure. Is also familiar with modern art, probably like German Expressionism. He had a twisted sense of humor. I was really into this series. This is probably very early Dan Clowes work, who went on to do, 8 Ball and Ghost World and stuff. This was a series about a private eye. It was set in the late 50s, early 60s. And this is one of my favorite comic pages of all time. It's wordless. I love the alternate. There's no like panel borders really. It just alternates between like black and white. It's supposed to be showing the character with a hangover. So Dan Clowes used a lot of something called Zipatone screens. Zipatone was pre-printed dot patterns on this like plastic stickers that you could put down on your drawing board. From a distance, it resembles shades of gray, but up close, it's just a bunch of dots. I love this anthropomorphic bottle of booze laughing at Lloyd in this panel. In situations like this, cartoonists usually have stars or birds flying around the head of a character, but Clowes used the original marshmallow shapes from Lucky Charms. Obviously, we had a lot of the same pop culture references. This is my favorite cartoonist, Jaime Hernandez. He's been drawing stories in a book he does with his brother called Love and Rocket since the early 1980s. I love his drawings and his stories. I don't know, at that time, it was like the closest I'd ever seen to something that resembled my life and my friends at the time. But he has a simple line, and he's great at using blacks, great composition. He's just the best. That spiral in that last panel of the steam coming out of that cup kind of looks like that Casper board game.
Yeah.
So I started drawing these characters around this time. I was trying to make them as simple as possible. So I wouldn't draw any faces on them. I just wanted to see if you could tell who they were just by like their clothes or their hair. And I never made any stories with them, but I would draw them on like mixtapes that I made for friends. So I just, I've been drawing these characters and I decided to make some t-shirts, and I finally got some really like super basic information that professional cartoonists use brushes and quill pens. I didn't know what kind of brushes and quill pens, so I just grabbed the first thing I found and made these designs. You can see I use some Zipatone screens on the car seats.
Wait, are these prints or original
Oh,
art?
these are t-shirts.
Oh, okay. So the colors are okay, silk screen or whatever.
Yeah, this one has a lot of screens on it.
I love the hair, the pink, the one that you had about the hair, the disaster one. I love that one.
Thanks. Yeah, this has, you can see a lot. There's like monster movies and all kinds of things happening here. So around this time, I started a band, and I made all the flyers. In this one, you can see the influence of romance comics and monster movies. Other bands started asking me to make their flyers too. This band liked this flyer so much that they made it into t-shirts. One of the things they liked about this was that the band members were all recognizable even without faces. More monster movie influence. So after a while, like my band broke up and I moved away from the small college town I'd been living in. And I was, I'd been reading like all these new comics for several years by that time. And I really wanted to make my own comics. And I think around this time, like the internet started to happen, and I was able to like research things and find out like what kind of ink and pens and brushes and paper people used, and found out things like you should draw larger than the piece will be printed. Just, things I never knew before. I know people make comics using different methods all the time, like really great comics, but I had a particular vision of how I wanted my comics to look, and knowing these things put me on the right track. So this was my first comic that I ever made. It's just one page. I was super intimidating by writing dialogue. So I just used captions instead, which was just slightly less intimidating. I showed a few friends, but I didn't know any cartoonists, so I didn't really have anyone to get like critiques or feedback from. I discovered a zine anthology of queer comics called Boy Trouble, edited by Rob Kirby and David Kelly. And I sent David my strip, but I never heard back. And then this is where I meet Tom. So Tom and I were temping together in a bank office building, and he encouraged me to make a comic and get a table with him at the Small Press Expo in Bethesda, Maryland, SPX. So I had been doodling a character that was based on a friend of mine. And she had, she would always tell me these funny stories. So like one of her stories I adapted into a comic.
Mhm.
And that was short. I added some more, like a couple one-page comics to that, and I went to SPX with Tom. And so it was great. Like I met some people I had heard about, like met them in person at this. So it was a really great experience. So the next year I went back and I made another issue of this comic. This time I did a 24-page comic called The Goo Goo Book, which was a reference to a song by the Cramps.
Anita likes that.
In this story, Go-Go Girl is a hairdresser. One of her clients is killed and she's arrested as the prime suspect. Some cute guy bails her out, but because he knows who the real culprit is. She tries to get him to go to the police, but he resists. They'd never believe my story. You probably won't either. You see, a few years ago, my sister Joni was just a normal girl with an abnormally beautiful head of hair. But her hair gradually became her obsession. No matter how good it looked, she was never satisfied. At first, she was content just trying a new shampoo or conditioner. Then she moved on to perms, tints, and dyes. Before long, she was experimenting with hairspray. But even that wasn't enough. Soon she was abusing mousses, gels, and pomades. Despite warnings, she began mixing products. She was completely out of control. Her hair was beautiful, but she was a mess. The years of recklessly combining chemicals were taking their toll. She began to mutate, ultimately becoming a hideous creature roaming through the streets at night, looking for a luscious head of hair in which to feed. So I went back again the third year. I made another issue. This time I had a couple short stories. One of them was inspired by an old 1950s B movie called The Hypnotic Eye. This was another comic I did later. This one was like a 2-color comic. I was really into this idea of just, I like to keep things simple. So a friend of mine had come up with this name for his imaginary like drag queen persona, and I decided to take that name and created this character that was kind of a cross between like the Jetsons and Archie. Intergalactic superstar entertainer. And I had designed this character years and years ago, years before The Simpsons even. You can see in the first panel, there's kind of a Dan DeCarlo foreground head in the corner. The Career Girl's Vacation on Venus. So at SPX, they used to put out an anthology every year with a theme. And one year, the theme was biography, and it had to be 12 pages or less. So I did a story about Darby Crash, who was the lead singer of this band called The Germs. It was an early Los Angeles punk rock band. Early LA punk scene is one of my longtime obsessions. Anyway, it was not accepted for the anthology, so I put it out myself. And later, a director who was making a movie about the Germs bought a bunch of copies to give to his cast and crew. There's some gay subject matter in this story too, which was another reason I was drawn to it. So I wrote to David Kelly again to buy some of his comics, and he wrote back that he had been wanting to get in touch with me, but he had lost my address. Him and Rob were putting together another issue of Boy Trouble, and they wanted to use the comic I had sent them. And they also wanted me to create 4 more pages. I ended up coloring Rob's drawing for the cover and designing the book as well. The new comics I did were similar in format to my first comic, just 1 page with no dialogue. This one was inspired by a Wanda Jackson song from 1961. This song reminds me of a guy I used to know. I get weak in the knees, my poor old head is a-reeling as I go deep into the funnel of love. We were friends for a long time. You would never see one of us without the other. Then he met this girl and they went out for a while. When she stopped seeing him, he was really torn up about it. Sometimes we'd run into her and you could see his heart breaking. It was so sad. One night he was talking about her and he just started bawling. I didn't know what to do. This was years ago. I've lost touch with him, but I'm sure he still thinks about her. God, it would suck to be hung up on someone like that. Can't run from the funnel of love. It's going to get you someday. So yeah, I became one of the regulars in the Boy Trouble anthologies. In the next issue, it was a full color issue, so I did a story that was 5 pages long with this 2-color style again. So Rob Kirby, one of the editors, started another series called 3, which was a series where there was just 3 stories in every issue. It's a lot smaller than the Boy Trouble comics had gotten. Anyway, for the second issue, he wanted each story to be a collaboration between 2 artists. So me and David Kelly collaborated on this 14-page comic. And it was told from 2 different points of view. And it was set in the late 50s, early 60s. I wrote and drew the pages told from the point of view of Jimmy, a country singer, and David did the pages told by Butch, a gay hustler.
Oh,
wow. So yeah, this is David's page. He wrote this and drew it, but I colored it, and I colored all the comics. And I made the ones that he did like one color, the ones I did another color, so that it would be a visual cue to help the reader know the narrator was changing. This is one of my pages. I know it sounds crazy since we just met, but when he walked out the door, it was like someone kicked me in the gut. The band finished out the week at Reds. I kept hoping I'd see Butch again, but of course I didn't. Then it was back on the bus, me, the band, and the big black cloud that had become my constant companion. The guys had no idea why I had become so quiet and gloomy, but they left me alone. Nights on the bus, I didn't sleep. I just stared out the window and thought about him. It was like staring into my dark, empty heart. Sure, I was alone before, but now it was like a black hole inside him, neon signs and flashing arrows pointing at it. I couldn't ignore it as easily as I used to. So I liked this idea of multiple points of view. So I did another story using that for a 3-page story about a band. And the first page was from the point of view of the guitar player. And then the second page was from the point of view of the bass player. And then the third page was from the point of view of the drummer. So around this time, I was doing a lot of illustrations for magazine, books, and corporate projects. This one is from a book about punk rock crafts called Bazaar Bizarre by Greg Der Ananian, showing Frankenstein as a crafter. This was illustrating the history of knitting. Somebody I knew told me about this paint called Flashe paint. I think it's French. It's a vinyl paint that was used in cell animation. And it's really flat and opaque, and that sounded like something I would really like to use. So I started making things using this paint, like these things here.
How big are those?
Those are about, I don't know, this tall, like maybe 6 or 7 inches tall. No, maybe like 8 inches tall, I'd say. And then I did a series of paintings based on the 7 deadly sins. This one is gluttony. This one is lust. And this one is vanity. I also did some triptychs of small paintings featuring a generic young superhero. It wasn't constrained by color fields like the 7 deadly sins. And I wasn't sure if people would want to buy one or all 3, so I tried to make them work together or as a set. I mean, I can see some similarities between like Liechtenstein and Leger, but I wasn't consciously doing that. But I think I was subconsciously incorporating things that I really liked into these. This was a painting I did for the back cover of one of the anthologies. Painting monsters. This is on My Secret Romance. Jimmy Olsen, Superman's sidekick, and Batman's sidekick, Robin. I guess around this time, I was kind of becoming more interested in like old DC comics. I hadn't really been looking at them for a long time, but I love the art and design of that time, and the stories were so ridiculous. I kind of found their kitschiness irresistible. And I was interested in looking at them from an adult perspective. So I was kind of re-investigating comics of that time. And then I stumbled onto a company on the internet that would print playing cards, and they were inexpensive. And I'd always wanted to make a deck of cards. And this was when I was looking at old comics, and I thought it would be a great project to like draw my own take on these old characters and make a deck of cards out of them. I had an idea of how I wanted the style to look. Like no outlines and very clean, flat colors and shapes. And I knew the best way to do this was to use Adobe Illustrator. But I didn't know how to use Adobe Illustrator. So I didn't let that stop me. I would sketch out the characters in pencils, and then I would scan the sketch and use the sketch as a template. And I would just was teaching myself how to use Illustrator as I was drawing these. And I did a different character like every day, which is insane. But by the time I finished the project, I was much better at using Illustrator. The character on the right is Led. He's one of the metal men from that comic I read in the 4th grade. This elongated man, the most ridiculously named hero. So this was, I mean, I felt compelled to do this project, and it was really fun to do. And I think the unintended result was I became really good at Illustrator after that, which allowed me to take on other projects I otherwise wouldn't have been able to do. When I was making the cards, I would post them on social media every day, and one of my friends saw them and contacted me when the library where she worked was needed someone to paint a mural in the children's room. So I ended up getting that job. I mean, it was all drawn and painted by hand, but I used Illustrator to like help me plan out the colors and the shapes. Ghosts, superheroes, and a raccoon eating a hot dog, or a walkie-talkie that looks like a hot dog. I also did some paintings for the library and made some silk screens based on them.
This is all an Illustrator.
Yeah, I did these in Illustrator.
I found the shape tool to be a game changer for me.
Yeah. This was a detail of end papers I did for the Book of Jezebel, which was put out by the website Jezebel. It was like a feminist news site. When they asked me to draw a witch, I couldn't resist doing something inspired by the Bewitched opening titles. This is an illustration for an alternative weekly article on fall fashion. This was for the American Repertory Theater. They did a production of Hansel and Gretel. It was like for kids, so they wanted the program to look like a coloring book and an activity book. This was a mascot for a hat store. This was a fabric design I did. It's based on Morrissey with a cat.
Wait,
Wait, what?
what were those for?
A fabric design. These are some drawings for education training materials. These are some postcards and posters. This was a tote bag design.
Mhm.
There's a preschool that saw the library mural I did and asked me to paint a bunch of mini murals at their preschool. So this is some of those.
Mm. Mm.
My friend Ashley asked me to make a children's book. that told the story of her husband Joel's life as a present for him. And I wrote it as if it was told by their 3-year-old daughter. So I tried a different method of making the illustrations. I drew with colored pencils and then scanned the drawings in black and white. And with Photoshop, I could change the color of the drawings to whatever I needed. And then I made the pages look like textured construction paper and created a slight drop shadow under the fills to make it look like the drawings were cutouts. So this is the original drawing that I did, and this is how it looked in the book. Joel was in a band in the 90s from the San Francisco area called Mr. T Experience, and they released a bunch of albums on Lookout Records. I don't know. I mean, it's kind of hard to see, but you can kind of see the drop shadow.
Yeah.
So that client I had been working for a long time doing illustrations, they asked me if I could do some animations for them. And I said yes, even though I had no idea how to do it. So, so I did it. Being able to work in Adobe Illustrator was really, I couldn't have done it without that. Because I was able to make all the pieces that move through Illustrator. Anyway, this is one of those videos.
There's no way around it. Sometimes life these days is stressful. There are so many things to do, problems to solve, tricky situations to navigate. It's easy to get overloaded and stressed. But there are techniques you can learn to manage that stress. Start by taking care of the most important things first, the things you have control over. That can help you feel less stressed. Use your energy wisely and know your limitations. Don't take on more than you can handle. When you're in a difficult situation you can't avoid or change, getting stressed won't fix it. Sometimes you can get so stressed you can't see anything besides the problem. But try to accept it without getting too upset. Take deep breaths to help you relax. Try to look at the problem from a different angle. Or talk them over with a friend and get another perspective. You may find unexpected solutions. Make time for activities you enjoy. That will help keep you relaxed when stressful situations do come up. If your stress ever feels out of control, lasts a long time, or affects your ability to function, you may want to talk to a healthcare professional. But starting with these techniques, you might be able to keep the stress from driving the fun out of your life.
So yeah, I ended up doing a lot of animated videos. During the pandemic, I started drawing these little devil drawings using the colored pencils that I'd used for Joel's project. And I would draw one of these every day and post it on Instagram. What'd you say?
Don't know.
I ended up drawing over 200 of them.
What? How big?
Like maybe like 8 by 8.
Wow.
Another Bewitched inspiration. I used some of those drawings as the basis for this fabric pattern. So I've been working on a book about the late 1970s punk scene in Los Angeles, and this is an illustration of the band X. This is influential K-rock DJ Rodney Bingenheimer. This is the Tropicana Motel where a lot of punk rock shenanigans went down. And I also started another band, this one called Hot Franks, and I started making flyers again. And also album covers.
I love the design of this.
Oh, thank you. So that is all I got. So hopefully you can see how my influences, you know, manifested in my drawings and my artwork.
Wow. Well, I think we got a lot of questions. A lot of people saying, where can I buy that fabric and stuff like that. So let's open it up for questions. Thanks, Craig.
Oh, should I stop sharing?
I don't know, because I have a feeling people are going to want to see other screens again.
Okay.
Where can I buy some of these t-shirts?
Oh, the t-shirt, those t-shirts are long gone, unfortunately. I should make them again.
Yeah, maybe stop sharing and we'll ask, and then I'll give us a chance to.
Okay.
There we go. And then, but I'm sure somebody's going to say, "Can you show that picture of Quisp again or something?" You know. Yeah. So if anyone's got questions, please raise your Zoom hand. Is probably the best way, and then you can unmute and ask. And I had a few, but I don't remember what they are. Anyone got questions? I also saw some in the chat. Like Jeannie, you had a few questions. You want to ask them?
I'll just say that there's construction happening outside. It's kind of loud here, so it might be hard to hear you, but.
All right, yeah. We'll let Jason go, and then we'll go to whoever.
From all that LA punk early scene stuff, did you ever hear of a band called Pig Children?
I have not.
They're the most underrated early LA punk bands, hardcore bands.
Okay. I'll have to.
There was a Go-Go's documentary that came out. Yeah. It was fantastic. If you haven't seen it. Awesome, man. Thanks for all this.
Oh, thank you.
Pig Children. Okay, we'll look that up. All right, Jeannie. There's Jeannie.
Yeah, thanks so much, Craig. This was just fantastic. It was also so nostalgic for me. I was bored. Oh my God. Anyway, and and your work now is fabulous. So I'm really glad to see the spoon
thanks.
Link for your fabric. That's really great. I'm gonna take a look at that. I had a couple of questions. One of them was let's see what the oh yeah, number one, the paint that you use, the vinyl that you said was French.
Yeah, it's spelled like flash with an E on the end with an accent.
Okay. Okay, great. And the other one, the name of the deck of cards printer.
Oh, I don't remember. But I think there's lots of people who make cards now.
It might be the one you told me. I think you told me Printer Studio was one.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that's what it was.
Because that's who I wound up using, and I think I got it from you. And I have my deck right here, but
thank you.
Oh, you have your...
Love your work.
Oh, thank you so much. Nice.
You got a cease and desist order from DC. Do you want to tell us?
I was selling them on Etsy, and I guess DC saw it and told me to stop.
But you sold a lot anyway, right? What did you say? How many?
I did. It's funny because I see stuff that people make out of those characters all the time, and nobody ever stops them.
I feel like it was right before they stopped caring about things like that, like big
Oh, really?
companies.
Probably.
I feel like, maybe I'm wrong, but there was a time where Disney would crack down on everything, and Disney now owns everything. But now you go to just about any festival, and it's all merchandise of Marvel and Star Wars and Disney characters by other people, and it doesn't seem
Wow.
like any lawyers are cracking down on everything.
Interesting.
Anyway, I really love those cards. And so are those still available, even kind of secretly, if we don't tell people?
I have a few left.
Okay. All right, reach out to Greg secretly. And
Sure.
Krista's got a question.
Yes, thanks, Craig. I love these styles.
Thank you.
I
Good
was
luck.
wondering about how you get a lot of your gigs. Do you pitch to places at all, or like when you posted those 200 on Instagram, like did anybody, approach you?
Not that time. People did buy some of those, like they wanted to buy my drawings, so they would buy that, but I don't remember getting any direct gigs from that. I think it's funny. I think most of my gigs are like somehow like a friend will see it, or somebody who knows somebody will see it, or something like that.
A lot of word of mouth.
A lot of word of mouth, yeah. I've never had an agent or anything like that.
That's amazing. Yeah, you just share your work and people talk and say,
Yeah,
can you do this? It sounds like you accepted to do a lot of things, even though you didn't necessarily know how to do them.
that's true.
Yeah, that sort of pushed you to
Yeah, to learn things. Yeah.
That's very cool. Thank you.
Are you doing that at all these days? Like I do love how you taught yourself Illustrator by doing those cards, and you taught yourself animation. I guess it was Flash maybe back then. I'm not sure, but
Yeah.
and is there anything else you're doing
Currently
that?
I mean, teaching myself at the moment?
Sure.
Not really. No, not really.
Did you get good at painting and gouache, for instance, or?
Yeah, I haven't done that in a while though.
So the big question is, like, a lot of that wonderful stuff you showed, the UPA backgrounds and all of that, like, people can crank that out in 10 minutes in Procreate now.
Yeah.
And so have you got to that point where you play around with it, or are you still analog?
I'm still analog. I have Procreate and I have an Apple Pencil and an iPad. I tried doing that, but I just haven't cracked it yet. And I haven't put a lot of time into it because I just like, I mean, I don't know. I guess Illustrator, is about as digital as I get.
Interesting. Because it seems like, I mean, tell me if I'm wrong, but it seems like there are a lot of digital tools marketed to make it look like.
Yeah, there are. And
Yeah.
I would love to know how to do that actually.
I had other questions. So Jay Ward created, now we're getting to the trivia section, but Jay Ward created Captain Crunch and the Quisp.
Yeah.
Probably as probably working for an ad agency, probably didn't make much money up for it, right? It was probably like $200 or something, even though.
Oh no, I mean they they designed the characters and like created all the like television commercials and stuff like that, So it was all like the same animators and voices and stuff that were, in Bullwinkle and stuff. So
interesting. Oh, Beth says my dad worked for Jay Ward.
Wow, that's really great.
We had some other interesting things. And you mentioned the Tricks Rabbit and Underdog, Joe Harris. I don't know anything about him. What
I don't either. I just happened to see that one day and I was like, oh, I love them both. So it's kind of interesting that a connection.
Who designed Boo Berry?
I have no idea. That's something I find out.
Again, I'm just sort of riffing but I want to riff on this. I didn't realize that Mr. Magoo short that you mentioned won an Oscar, the one where he's flying. And the reason I mention it is because I grew up, you know, pre VHS or anything. And so our family had 2 cartoons on a reel-to-reel sort of projector system
Yeah.
that we sometimes show as little children. And one of them was that Mr. Magoo.
Are you
And I
serious?
remember it
Wow.
really well because I saw it dozens of times. You'd like, please get out the projector and show the Mr. Magoo cartoon. But I
It's a good one. It's a good
Yeah.
one.
So now I'm gonna go dig it up, but I think my heart may not want to be there. And that's
Do you have it there in Florida?
what?
Do you have it there in Florida?
No.
Oh.
But I'm sure it's online, super easy to
Oh
find.
yeah. Probably.
Okay. So what other questions can we ask Craig? Does anybody have questions about I know we have some fans of Batman and Batman swimming trunks.
There's so many things in the chat. Oh.
Yeah, mostly people just saying, I love this, I love this. So Chris in the chat, for instance, well, you can see that if you're in the chat, Craig. I'll go up to the top, but you can see that Chris is asking a funny question about robots, which is true, right? Well, okay. As we finish, oh wait, now I grew up on Adam West Batman, VHS tapes. I made my brother a Batman stuck in a French fry box Halloween costume. Jason says, what are your thoughts on comic tattoos?
I'm for it.
And Lori asks, what are you doing now? So that actually is my question that I was going to ask.
What am I doing now? Mostly working on that book, the
LA Punk book, right?
yeah.
And you're writing, tell me if I'm right, you're writing like a little paragraph about each, and then one illustration for each. Well, thanks. Yay, Craig. And you're coming down to Providence soon to go to that show.
Yeah.
Okay.
And our band's playing there in October.
Oh, okay. Okay, yay. Okay.
You still playing a band?
Yeah, still doing a band.
What's it called?
Hot Franks.
And what about that book? When will it be available so we can, I mean, I'm very interested in checking that book out.
I'm not sure, but I'll try and let you know. I'll let Tom know for sure.
Thanks.
Sure. Oh yeah. And wait, actually we do have another Providence person online. That's Gina. So you're gonna be at what the hell is that? Myrtle, right? Myrtle. In October.
It's a Sunday afternoon, October 13th.
Yay. Okay. Oh, Jeannie, boy, now lots of just little Jeannie wants to know what instrument you play.
I play guitar.
And sing and write.
That's correct.
All right. Oh wait, more questions. No, I don't know. No, that's it. Okay. I just don't want to hang up, Craig, but I love seeing you, and I love seeing all that art and stuff. And I love living in that world, you know, that so much. I would just want to talk about and DeCarlo and even all those other like Batman drawings and stuff where you were like, this is Gil Kane and this is
Oh, I just noticed that you can see the My Favorite Martian game on the wall behind me.
Yeah. Oh, you know, we all noticed your Hawaiian Punch t-shirt, but I did just notice a Hawaiian Punch doll on your desk.
There is.
You get that? No, the doll. The shirt's great. Oh my gosh, look at this. Who designed that character?
I'm not sure. I always liked him, and he didn't make it to the slideshow. So,
you didn't mention. I mean, tell me if I'm wrong. But when UPA was formed, it wasn't just disgruntled. It was also I guess they were disgruntled, but it was also very affordable to make that kind of animation compared to right. So
it's more economical, yes.
Yeah, that style became really popular or sort of rampant for a while because it was so.
Yeah, I mean, even Disney started doing that. You know, it's like they left Disney because they didn't want to have anything to do with it, and then they ended up copying them because it was so popular at the time.
Oh, hey, Carol's got a question.
I have to ask about the car and the animation, because a lot of us grumble about how hard it is to draw a car, and you nailed it. What did you do to get to that design that is so wonderful?
Just looking at old cartoons mostly.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
it's
that's
just
yeah.
the car.
That's a secret.
Well, thank you.
All right, Craig, thanks so much. And we put some of your links in the chat, and I'll make sure that they are also available. All right. You can see how much I don't want to hang up. So, all right, everybody, thanks for joining us. Why don't you come off mute and give Craig a round of applause, and we'll all have a great afternoon wherever we live. Thanks.
Oh,
Craig.
thank you.
Thank you.
For this immersion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Craig, I'll see you soon. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
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 Thanks for joining us. This has been a production of the Sequential Artists Workshop, or SAW. You can find us on social media at Comics Workshop and online at sawcomics.org. You can hear about our many courses at learn.sawcomics.org. SAW is a nonprofit and supported by people like you. Learn how to make a tax-deductible donation at the donate page of sawcomics.org. You can join our free community of comics explorers at members.sawcomics.org. Thanks so much for being here.